Hi and welcome to this how to make shrinky dinks tutorial from gathered.how. Here we're going to show you two methods for how to make shrinky dinks. We've got tutorials for doing the beginner project and an advanced project once you're feeling more confident with your shrinky dink making. We're going to be using these clear plastic shrinkies sheet, and the first thing we need to do to make it suitable for a beginner is we're going to add a bit of texture to the surface of the clear plastic. I'm doing this by rubbing the surface very lightly with a fine glass paper to give it a bit of texture. This means we can use all kinds of different mediums to colour our shrinky dinks. Here I'm using good old coloured pencils and I'm drawing a rainbow. Draw on your design freehand with your coloured pencils. If there are some areas on your shrinky dink that aren't taking on the colour, don't worry. We're going to go back and fix that at the end. You can see there's a bit at the top of the rainbow that I didn't manage to get a good texture on, so I'm going back over with my glass paper, rubbing off a bit of that shiny surface again, before going back with my coloured pencils and filling in those gaps. Now I'm going to cut out my shrinky dink. So trim all around the outside of your design. Because the shrink plastic sheets can be quite fragile, it's often easier to move the sheet in your hand rather than trying to move the scissors. It can help if you trim off a big section as well before going back in with your sharp scissors and snipping into the detail that you want to remove. Now we're ready to shrink our shrinky dink. If you're going to use a heat gun like me, you'll need a heat-proof surface to plate your shrink plastic shape on. I'm just using a regular ceramic tile, but if you've got a heat-proof craft mat, that works just as well. You want to support your shrinky dink on the tile, otherwise the heat gun will blow it right off. So I'm using a wooden cocktail stick to hold mine in place while I fire the heat gun. A pair of tweezers or something else to just keep it sturdy that won't get too hot is a great choice. We're going to move the heat gun all over the surface of the shrinky dink. We want to try and encourage an even shrinking as much as we can so that each part shrinks to the same amount and ideally at the same time. So keep holding the heat gun quite close to the surface of the shrinky dink. You want it only about ½ centimetre away, but keep moving the heat gun all the time so that you're spreading the heat evenly over the surface of your rainbow. After a minute or two, you'll see the edges of the shrinky dink start to move up, and it can look like the shape is curling back on itself. This means that one part of the shrink plastic sheet has started to shrink. So don't worry, just adjust the way you are holding it so that then you can direct the heat gun to the other part of the design, and you'll see the shrink plastic start to straighten out as it gets smaller and shrinks more evenly across the shape. Keep moving the heat gun over the surface of your shrinky dink until all parts of the shrink plastic sheet have shrunk fully. You'll know this has happened because the plastic will stop shrinking and your design should now be lying flat. That's it, the magic has happened. You just leave your shrinky dink to cool fully and then it's ready to use in all of your craft projects. Once you've mastered the basics of shrinky dinks, we've got a brilliant advanced shrink plastic project for you. We're using this heart template from the heart embroidery pattern on gathered.how, which we'll put a link for you in the description for this video. I'm taping this template down onto my ceramic tile, and I'm going to use this as the basis of my shrinky dink design. For this project we're going to use the clear shrink plastic as it is. We're not texturizing the surface with grass paper this time. That means we can only use permanent markers or things that will stick to the clear plastic sheet for our design, and we're using archival ink fine liners. The beauty of this is that we can add some really delicate and detailed line art onto our shrinky dink. And because these are archival pens, they'll stay and set in place once dry, so you know they'll keep the colour even on a shiny surface like this. I've attached my clear plastic sheet securely over the top of my template, and I'm using my archival ink fine liners to trace over the template outline underneath. I'm not colouring in any sections of this design, or if I am, I'm only going to add some very tiny dots of colour. The thing to remember about shrinky dinks is that as you shrink your shrink plastic sheet, the colour concentrates too. So if you colour in large areas of your design, it can end up looking a bit too intense. Because this heart template is so beautifully detailed in its line art, I'm just going to reflect that by adding in the lines in different colours of archival ink pens to reflect the beautiful, delicate design of the heart template below. I'm speeding up the footage now as I repeat the same process, tracing over the lines on the heart template below with the different fine liner archival inks in different colours. The main thing to watch out for here is that you don't smudge the lines you've already drawn as you add new ones, so it can be quite helpful to start from the left hand side and work to the right, or the right hand side and work to the left, depending on if you're left or right handed. Or you can, as I like to do, work your way around the design working in different sections, but just take care that your hand is well away from the surface of the shrink plastic and you're not smudging the areas you've already coloured in. Make sure you leave long enough for your archival inks to fully dry before you remove your shrinky dink from the tile and the template. I'm removing the template from the tile too because I'm going to need this for when I shrink my shrink plastic sheet. Cut out your shrink plastic shape ready for shrinking. You want to use some good sharp embroidery scissors for this, just to make sure that the delicate shrink plastic cuts neatly without shattering. If you want to put a hole or something into your shrink plastic shape, say you want to use it as a keyring or a necklace, you'll need to do this before it shrinks, because once it's shrunk it gets too thick to easily make a hole. I'm using a foam block and the point of my sharp scissors to make a hole in the top of my heart, as I want to use this as a hanging pendant once I've shrunk the plastic. The foam block has given me something to press through into, and now I'm going to go back and neaten up the little bits of plastic on the other side of the hole that have been made by me making that push through the plastic. So I'm going to snip those off now before I shrink my shape. Just as with the beginner version, I'm securing my shrink plastic shape onto my heat-proof surface, my ceramic tile in this case, and I'm holding the shape in place just so the heat from the heat gun doesn't blow it across the space. You can see that the heat gun, which I'm moving all over the surface of the shrink plastic, is really starting to have an effect, and it looks like my heart is almost folded back in on itself like a closed flower. But it's alright, I'm going to keep moving my heat gun over the surface of the plastic, making sure that all parts of that shrink plastic sheet are going to shrink evenly. And even now you can see how me just continuing to heat it, moving the heat gun at all times, is helping make my heart flatten out again, and so it's no longer curling up on itself. If you're a paper crafter and you have a few large acrylic blocks in your craft stash, these can be really helpful when you're making shrinky dinks too. Once your shape is flat, place your acrylic block on top and leave it to cool with the acrylic block in place. This will help you get a much flatter and smoother finish to your shrinky dink. We hope you've had fun with the How to Make Shrinky Dinks tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to the Gathered Makes YouTube channel for more great craft projects to try.